جمال الوجود بذكر الإله.
We're going to, I'm just going to say this. I'm just reading this bio of Dr. Dina El-Douaisi and Odaisi, sorry. Yes, my brain is totally gone. And my brain is gone because her bio is, mashallah, tabarakallah, something to be inspired by. Okay, mashallah. I'm going to quickly read through it. So Dr. Dina Odaisi holds a doctorate in education, I'm terrible, from the University of Oxford and is the board chair of a group of private schools in Egypt. Her PhD focused on the relationship between pedagogic practice, cultural values and educational principles espoused and enacted in community schools in Egypt. She holds a MA in Education, Master of Arts from the University College of London and a Bachelor of Arts in English from Alexandria University in Egypt. She believes in the interconnected and multidisciplinary nature of knowledge, and her research interests center around empowerment, Islamic education, alternative education, decolonizing pedagogy, social and emotional learning, community schools, critical pedagogy, Tabarak ar-Rahman, and holistic education. Dina, thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Hope you're all doing great. So let me start with a question. If you have the capacity to give your students just one gift of learning, one lesson that they would leave the school with after 14 years, what would that be? What do you think it is? Just one lesson. Yeah?
Empathy.
Empathy, okay. Any other thoughts? Tawakkul. Thank you. Okay, openness. So what if we have one thing that would encompass all the lessons that students should have? And that is the lesson of La ilaha illallah. So I surveyed across the years, from my own personal experience, what it is that we need in life. And I thought, and I come to the conviction, after growing pains, that it is the lesson of Tawheed. So the presentation today is about roots and rhizomes, and how can we transverse the written book of the Quran and the observed book of the universe, which I hope you'll find interesting. This is not working. No, it's not. Huh? I'll do it. So this started with a personal story of extreme pain and frustration. I would call myself an orphan child of the Arab Spring. I know you've heard the Arab Spring in 2011. So I was very frustrated, disillusioned, and disappointed with the turn of events. And that kind of pain led me to understand that we are captives. We are suffering from captivity, epistemic captivity, spiritual captivity, ontological captivity. We're captive to our colonial structures, to our schools, to our authoritarian regimes that kind of silence voices and discourage critical thinking and constrain us in structures of power. We are captive to the neoliberal regime that reduces schooling and education to only, servants of the market, if you may. So what I thought of at that point of time is that I would want to embark on a journey of emancipation, and that's when I started my MA, and I discovered the gems of Tawheed when I did a research on holistic education in ancient Egypt and Islamic Egypt. And the wonderful thing was, I thought that way back in time, things were much more progressive than these days. And that was an amazing insight. So, subhanAllah, how can we transform education from the colonial legacy of fragmentation to holistic integration? That is the question. And my hypothesis today is that we have to only find healing in Tawheed. We have the answers, we have the solution, we have the resume, we only have to put it into action. Okay? So the research story began in 2017 when I started my doctoral research in Egypt, and I studied 2 community schools. One of them was very progressive, and it's going to go by the name of Iqra as a pseudonym name. So this story of the school was, yeah, sure. Yes, please. So the research title was Reimagining Education, Exploring Critical Pedagogies in Egyptian Community Schools. And now this research should be put into context. This is against a backdrop of extremely traditional learning in Egypt. Okay, either it's Western schools, either it's public schools, private schools. The mainstream is very, let's say, traditional, westernized, reduced to the mainstream colonial model of schooling. So having this innovative story of Iqra was really inspiring. Now this is an experimental research-led model of schooling that is called Iqra, and they did something very interesting. They had the capacity to innovate the curriculum top, bottom, top. So they innovated the pedagogies, the curriculum, the structure of the school, the way the relationships between the stakeholders went. And one of the very interesting things they did is they created a 1,000-word curriculum from the Quran. And what they did was they adopted the Pareto principle, you know, the 80-20% law. So they thought that 20% of the Quranic words would make students be immersed in the Quranic worldview. Okay, and actually many scholars claim that having knowledge of the 20% of the words of the Quran would make you understand the language and the content, and that is very interesting. So what they did was they created, they created a curriculum of 1,000 words, and they depended on the roots of the words to create lesson plans that are holistic, emancipative, experiential. And let me go through the pedagogies in the next slide. So they had very interesting pedagogies. One of them was pedagogy of mu'aisha. What is mu'aisha? In Arabic is the living, the experiential living and immersion in real life experiences. So that was the main thing. One of the things they did was they re-innovated the idea of field trips. So they had 40 field trips across the year. And that was amazing. And I've seen myself how the students had a wealth of knowledge and expertise that made them much more aware of things going around them and have more general knowledge than kids their age. I myself found them understanding things that I had no aware of because of that capacity. And I jokingly asked one of the teachers, is there a place in Cairo that you have not visited yet? They went to zoos, they went to public gardens, they went to factories, they went to museums, they went everywhere. And because of that flexible model of capacity and their capacity to innovate, they had the time in their schedule to do things that were beyond traditional schooling. Now, pedagogy of Mu'aisha, we have also the pedagogy of inquiry-based learning, and that is basically the way things are going in the school. They had experiential learning. They had different learning stations where students would go through around the day. It was a very experiential learning journey. So, for example, they learned agriculture, carpentry, dealing with animals, farming, and so on. One of the pedagogies I would also focus on is the pedagogy of what I call concept-based interdisciplinarity. So they had no subjects. It was not English, math, and science. It was Quran, basically. So they studied through the concepts of Quran, the different fields of knowledge. Now, after years of me research, I came up with this model, which I call the Islamic critical pedagogy model for transformative education. And it depends on the 4 Ps, which is powerful knowledge, powerful pedagogies, powerful relationships, and powerful leadership. And what do I mean by power, and why power in its specificity? Well, we live in a day, an age and day where power is the mainstream, is the thing that really controls us. But Islam teaches us that power is something else. Power is about constraint, about self-restraint, about the ability and the capacity to manage one's emotions and bring ethics and value into our actions. And subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also teaches us that He loves the powerful, faithful person much more than the weak one, and in both there is khair. But this is something we lack in this ummah, right? We need this idea of reimagining and re-envisioning what power is, and how can we be powerful but kind and compassionate. And that is only going to happen through reimagining curriculum, pedagogies, and what school culture is. So I'm not going to focus on all the model because of time constraints and limitations, but let me focus on why would I assume power is, why would I assume that we have to have powerful knowledge? So powerful knowledge as rhizomatic, and this is a concept that I'm going to focus on today. I know it's a little bit philosophical, but I think it would be interesting if we link knowledge to nature. Okay, so we have two things. We have Tawheed as the root of all knowledge, okay? And we have also, next slide, please. No? No? Way back. Sorry. It's okay. So we have Tawheed and the Quran and the Sunnah as the roots of knowledge. But have you ever come across a ginger? How does it look like? Ever seen a ginger growing underground? What does it look like? It's an interconnected nodes, okay? Where there's no beginning and there's no end, and from a ginger sprouts new roots. And this is a very similar image to the mycelium network, which is an underground, I think we can go on, which is an underground metaphor for how trees and how some organic roots can grow in a very organic and interconnected way. The beauty of rhizome is that there's no center, there's no beginning, there's no end. You can enter it from different modes. And this is a philosophical concept, actually. And it also depends on multilinear and non-horizontal paths of growing. So, yeah, we can skip that. So my assumption here is knowledge has to go both ways, vertical growth and horizontal growth. There has to be interconnected nodes of knowledge coming together, and there also has to be a spiral curriculum scaffolding that engages the students in interdisciplinary depth of knowledge, and that is very important. And that is maybe what we're focusing on these days. So understanding the interconnectedness of disciplines through non-linear learning pathways that promote spiritual and intellectual growth is essential. Rhizomes represent a dynamic model of knowledge where ideas flourish across disciplines without fixed origins or conclusions. They could serve as metaphors for knowledge that spreads horizontally and dynamically. They emphasize the absence of fixed beginnings or ends, showcasing how various fields of study can interconnect. And this interconnectedness encourages learners to explore various fields, fostering a holistic understanding of the self and the universe. And this is an interesting metaphor of how infinite pathways of knowledge would come into being if we adopt the rhizomatic model. What happens is we have three things happening, is that we have interconnected and non-linear multidisciplinary approach. So we have English and math and science and Arabic and physical education and arts all combined into one subject. And I'll explain in a few seconds how could that come into being. And we also have organic growth, because this emphasizes how can students explore freely their own inquisitive questions without being constrained with the objectives of the lesson, the learning plans of the teachers, or the confined and controlled paradigm of those writing the textbook of the curricula. And we also have interdisciplinary connections and expanding knowledge, because this goes beyond what the student can learn in one capacity. So what I'm assuming here is Tawheed is the unifying center of interconnected knowledge. Okay? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one, right? We all know that. Why do we not assume as well that because Allah is one, knowledge is one? So what happened in the modern age is that we took that whole unified sum of knowledge and we fragmented it into pieces. And what happened is, as a result, is that our brains and hearts and minds have become fragmented. So the spiritual realm is extremely separated from the real world. Prayer is different from doing work or studying. Ethics and science have nothing to do with religion, and so on. And that has resulted in the bifurcation of the self and the split personality and the hybrid personality that we're all suffering from today. Now, this is an interesting image of the Quran, of Quranic concepts. And this was a research done, and it actually captures one way of analyzing the concepts of the Quran. So these are around 300 concepts with 350 relationships. So we have the main concept in a surah, for example, across different surahs across the Quran that is repeated. And then we have concepts that are sub-themes or sub-related underneath the main concepts. So in a way, what does that show? If you read the Quran in that sense, what does that show? Interconnections, non-linear, non-horizontal ways of knowing things. And it shows the one fact that we miss in our schools, that knowledge cannot be separated, that these relationships needs to be pursued and needs to be explored in depth. Okay, so this is one example of Surah Al-Baqarah, subhanAllah. And this is amazing. I mean, whenever I read the Quran, whenever I read any surah, I get mesmerized by the way the narration flows smoothly and rapidly and very quickly from the world of the afaq and the universe and the cosmos to the world of the self, to the life we have these days, to the afterlife, to the past, present, and future, where time is one, where all events combine in one unified whole. And this narration, this flow, this smooth fluidity with which the narration captures our interest is sometimes hidden in the logic of modernity because we cannot understand that logic. So this is a way of reassessing how we know the knowledge of the Quran. So, okay, this is a visualization of concepts which exemplifies how we can redefine our approach of the Quran. Now, one of the things I would assume, yeah, we can skip that. Okay, skip that as well. Yeah, one of the things that I'm here would like to propose for you is that we need to reimagine the curriculum. The curriculum is already there, actually. It's the Quran and it's the cosmos. That's what I'm saying. So we have two books, the book of Revelation and the book of the universe. And the scholars call it Kitabullah al-Mastur wa Kitabullah al-Mandur. And they both have science. So what about if we reimagine a curriculum of science, a curriculum of ayahs in the book and ayahs in the cosmos? Now, how would that look like? Let us take a very quick example. We can skip that as well because of time. Yeah. So let's explore the ayah of water as an example of how students could explore interdisciplinarity in a school setting. So one thing is they could do is that they could study the water as the source of creation from the microbiome to human beings and to animals. This is one way of doing it. And also, they can study water, the cycle of water and the divine precision in nature and how these cycles are exemplify and manifest the names of Allah Almighty. And we can also study water as a test of faith and resilience. Remember the story of Talut. So all these kind of aspects exemplify one way of doing it. Also, they study water as a source of healing and purification, not just cleansing of the body, but a way of healing from sins. And there is research actually done on how human beings feel much better after doing wudu when they do a sin, for example. And that is, I think, one of the amazing things of the Quran, of how it reorients ourselves on how to see the different elements in the universe. They can study water as resurrection, as a spiritual renewal. And through that, they can do an analysis of the laws of the universe, the sunan, which is something very missing in the Quran. And from my own personal experience, this is one of the very easy ways to combat atheism and to inculcate in children a sense of tawheed, to study and explore the sunan, the universal laws that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created for us. They study also water as a divine boundary, and they understand halic lines and natural limits, and also Allah's power through that. They study water as divine control and power, and also, next slide, they can also explore the notion of water in paradise. So you see, this is one way of doing it, and this is another example of the sky, but unfortunately we do not have the time for that. But let me take an example of how this would look like in a curriculum. So in the next slide, we would have, okay, skip that as well. So this is a way of doing it. If we have a Quranic concept or a Quranic theme, we can let students explore the environmental and ecological dimension, the spiritual and faith dimension, intellectually, ethically, economically, historically, aesthetically and creatively, and psychologically, as we saw in the example of water. And there are also different dimensions, of course, if we want to go in depth. Now, this is also an example of how a curriculum map could look like for teachers. If teachers want to have a brainstorming template where they have the concept in the middle of the map, and then they have different multidisciplinary questions, and this is very similar to the IB if anyone is familiar with it. So how the world works, how we organize ourselves, action and services, akhlaq, knowledge, and so on. So we have different categories that organizes the knowledge, and this is very helpful and useful for teachers when they come to plan the unit of inquiry or have a lesson planning template. Now, finally, we can focus on rhizomatic pedagogies very quickly. We can't have that curriculum by traditional means, right? We can't do that. So we need rhizomatic pedagogies that interconnect the human heart, mind, body, and soul. So to do that, let me just focus on 2 or 3 main pedagogies. One of them is what I call the Tawhidi inquiry-based learning. Okay, we have inquiry-based learning, but we don't have Tawhidi inquiry-based learning. TBL or TIBL would mean that we need to have a focused center on Tawheed, the names of Allah, and the manifestations of Tawheed in the universe. So these are like the compass that guides the questions. One other thing is Ummah-based learning networks, for example. This is an example of rhizomatic pedagogy. Ummah-based learning networks means that schools would connect together from different parts of the world on particular projects like Quranic exploration, sustainable development, charity, whatever it is, to come together to explore these concepts. Another example would be prophetic problem solving methodology, AI-enhanced Islamic learning tools, and as well contemplative nature pedagogy. And contemplative pedagogy is very common in positive psychology. They use sky gazing today to boost emotional well-being. So what if we use sky gazing, which we have in our sunnah, subhanallah, as a pedagogical tool and a healing tool as well? Okay, so we talked about that. Yeah, can skip that as well. So what I'm claiming is we can't have this transformative model except if we integrate the heart, the nafs, the body, and the soul, and we bring back these fragmented parts of human nature into one healed whole. And also, the core values of such a model would be criticality, compassion, contemplation, and praxis. And there's no way of doing it without having compassion at the heart of the learning process, just as we learned yesterday as well. So I bring to your attention that we are at the moment, as you well know, of extreme ruptures and disruptions. But I am looking at the bright side, although AI is actually endangering different models of learning. But I think as Muslims and as people who have a transformative vision in this age and day, we have an opportunity for disruption. Okay, so AI makes learning, the traditional learning, obsolete. So what if we use AI to our benefit? I'm here quoting Mohammed Gaudat, who's an ex-chief officer of Google X, and he says that at the age of the rise of technology, the age of the rise of the machines, the core human essence of ethics, love, connection, compassion, empathy are the only traits that will save the world. We do not need any more science discovery to save the world. AI will do that. We do not need any more innovation to make life easier. Human connection is the superpower. And whether it's an AI, whether or not human compassion has always been the superpower, but we forget that. So what I'm assuming here is that the disruption and opportunity for innovative and transformative learning is easier this age and day because of AI. Yeah, just another slide, please. Now, this is something I've customized and tailored, which I hope you'll use and let me know if you have any kind of feedback. This is just a pilot experiment for the customized Tawheed Ed companion. It will help you create lesson plans, learning experiences, leadership models, and learning journeys based on that model that we spoke about before. And I welcome your feedback because this is a work in progress, so I'm already updating it each and every week. Just 2 slides left. Now, I would like to end with this quote, which I've always felt that captures the educational mission statement of Islam and captures the heart of Islam. When ربيع بن عامر رضي الله عنه قال إن الله ابتعثنا لنخرج من يشاء من عباده من عبادة العباد إلى عبادة رب العباد ومن جور الأديان إلى عدل الإسلام ومن ضيق الدنيا إلى سعتها. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent us forth to deliver whomsoever He wills from the servitude of men to the worship of Allah, and from the oppression of false deities and religions to the justice of Islam, and from the narrowness of this world to the vast expanse of its horizons and the spaciousness of the hereafter. So what I'm calling today is that we indulge in the self-healing exercise of refining our intentions with sincerity, reclaiming our narrative, emancipating our hearts, minds, and souls and our educational spaces, and have this end aim of emancipating the Ummah in Palestine. Each and every step we make contributes towards that larger goal. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept your deeds and enable you to do that holy mission, inshallah. Thank you very much.
Jazakallah khair, Dina. That was very inspiring, mashallah. We have time for one question. Up the back behind Professor Shaheen. Yes, you. Yes. Dina.
It's very interesting, thank you very much. And it's interesting in the sense that it's more organic. And I totally agree with this, but I have a question. Do you have any suggestion how can we hire and train teachers on something like that? Because it needs a polymath. Okay? All teachers should be polymaths.
You hit the nail on the head. Actually, that's the main problem and predicament. So after my research, I launched a school in Egypt based on that model. And one of the main challenges is transforming teachers' paradigm. So in my journey, one of the things that was really transformative is beginning with Tawheed, beginning with Tazkiyah. Focus on the inner state of the teachers, their emotional connection to Allah, and they do not if they do not understand Tawheed, they'll not be able to do that. And that was the challenge. Okay, it took around 2 or 3 years just for them to begin to start to realize the connections. And one of the things I figured out is that, the colonial system has been so disruptive to the extent that our minds as Muslims are not capable of seeing the manifestations of Tawheed in the universe. So when we come to talk to the teachers about the Sunan and the universal laws and the patterns, they're not able to do that. So my solution, what I would assume, I do not presume to have solutions, but the only way to go is that focus on teachers. Focus on professional development, but before professional development, the personal development, the holistic journey of the teachers to understand Tawheed as a foundation, and then go from there on, the technicalities of the program.
And the evaluation.
The assessment.
The assessment. Also on the outcomes for students.
Yes.
And also for redeveloping the curriculum.
Yeah, what the saying goes: you treasure what you measure. So if you don't treasure holistic understanding, spiritual transformation, this model is going to fall into pieces. And that's what happens in usually progressive schools when students go into more different grades, for example, like grade 9, 10, 11, 12. So in the primary stages, at least, just to be realistic, we can do a holistic assessment as Tazkiyah. And this is something also we start in the school. So we have like a personalized assessment for the students, focusing on the multiple intelligences of each and every child, and how far they have come to an understanding of the concepts, and how far they're coming to a praxis, the practical implementation of the concept. So yeah, you have to re-envision assessment. You can't do it the traditional way. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Can we just thank Dina again for this amazing work? Mashallah, you're very inspiring, mashallah. Okay, now we are... Something happens when you get old. You can't see anymore. Our next speaker is Brother Dylan Chown, mashallah. Now, I'm always swept away by Dylan's bio. Allahu Akbar. And I'm just going to give you an insight into my very small contribution of reading his bio. I'm really humbled when I read your bio, by the way. Dylan is a lecturer at the Centre for Islamic Thought and Education at the University of South Australia. He also serves as a co-curriculum advisor for the Graduate Certificate in Islamic Education, the nation's first accredited teacher education program, grounded in Islamic pedagogy. He's a recognised thought leader and is deeply engaged in advancing Tajdeed, I can't talk today, as a vision-driven, faith-centred approach to reimagining Islamic schooling across curriculum, pedagogy and assessment. His PhD research explores how educators enact Islamic pedagogy within the everyday constraints of schools, examining the dilemmas and possibilities that arise. Purpose drives practice. He advocates for Islamic pedagogy not as an add-on, but as the foundation of transformative educational praxis. In collaboration with site colleagues, his scholarship promotes Islamic schools as sites of distinction, shaped by coherence between worldview, purpose and practice. He is a co-editor of Islamic Schooling in the West, Pathways to Renewal and Wellbeing in Islamic Schools, that was published by Palgrave Macmillan, and contributes globally through networks including the Cambridge Dialogues, Rethinking Islamic Education, and the Global Association of Islamic Schools, as well as several other publications, as well as mentoring students and early career researchers like myself, as well as. Jazakallah khair.
سعد إلى منتهى